A boat arrives at a quiet Mississippi island on the 4th of July. Hours later, it leaves. Everyone is on board, except one young man. Days later, his body is found. But that's not the part investigators are still trying to understand. Two people remember his final conversation differently. GPS records tell one story. Witness accounts raise another. A phone may hold answers no one has seen yet. And one question continues to haunt everyone involved. Did Nolan Wells choose to stay behind? Or was something else happening during those final moments? Tonight, we'll walk through the verified timeline, separate fact from speculation, and examine why this case continues to raise difficult questions weeks later. There are some stories that begin with a tragedy, and then there are stories that begin with a question. This is one of those stories. A young man sets out to celebrate Independence Day with friends on a quiet Mississippi barrier island. Hours later, the boat that brought him there leaves without him. Days pass. Search crews comb the shoreline. His family waits beside their phones, hoping every ring will bring the news they've been praying for. Instead, the mystery only grows. Two people remember Nolan's final conversation differently. A timeline raises new questions. Digital records tell one story while witness accounts tell another. And every new answer seems to uncover yet another question. Today, investigators continue working to establish exactly what happened during the final hours before Nolan Wells disappeared. His family says they are still searching for clarity, and much of the case remains under active review. Before we continue, if you appreciate carefully researched true crime documentaries that focus on verified facts rather than internet rumors, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to PalimpSest Crimes, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new investigation. Now, let's go back to where this story truly begins. For Nolan Wells, the 4th of July was supposed to be a day like countless others across the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Friends, boats, sunshine, and a holiday spent enjoying one of the state's most popular destinations. Horn Island sits miles from the mainland, separated by open water and surrounded by miles of undeveloped shoreline. Unlike crowded beaches filled with hotels and businesses, Horn Island is largely untouched. Its beauty is exactly what attracts visitors. But that same isolation can quickly become dangerous when something goes wrong. On that morning, Nolan joined friends aboard a boat heading toward the island. Nothing about the trip appeared unusual. Nothing suggested the day would become the center of national attention. Friends laughed. People swam. Others relaxed along the beach. For several hours, everything seemed ordinary. Then, sometime later that afternoon, something changed. Investigators believe Nolan was no longer with the rest of the group when the boat eventually departed the island. Exactly why that happened remains one of the central questions in this case. According to public statements made later, two different accounts emerged about Nolan's intentions before the boat left. Those accounts would become one of the biggest unresolved issues surrounding the investigation. One version suggested Nolan intended to remain behind. Another suggested he planned to return to the boat before it departed. At first glance, those statements may seem like a small difference, but for investigators, and especially for Nolan's family, that difference changes everything. Because if Nolan intended to leave with his friends, something prevented that from happening. If he intended to stay, then another set of questions immediately follows. What was his plan? How long did he expect to remain on the island? And what happened after everyone else was gone? Those aren't just questions for investigators. They're questions his parents have carried every single day since their son's disappearance. Imagine trying to understand the final decision someone you love ever made, only to discover the people who were there remember it differently. That uncertainty has become one of the emotional centers of this entire case. And it wouldn't be the last. As investigators continued gathering information, another name quietly entered the conversation. A young woman who had reportedly spent time speaking with Nolan before the group separated. For days, very little was publicly known about her. Online speculation quickly filled that information gap. As often happens during high-profile investigations, rumors spread faster than verified facts. Eventually, members of her family publicly clarified that she had safely left the island that same day on another boat. She was not missing, and according to statements shared publicly, she said she had no knowledge of what happened to Nolan after they parted ways. But one important detail remained. Her recollection of Nolan's final plans reportedly differed from the account provided by his friends. That contradiction remains one of several issues investigators continue examining. Because in any investigation, facts matter, memories matter, timelines matter, and sometimes, the smallest difference between two accounts can become one of the most important details in the entire case. What happened next would only deepen the mystery. As search efforts intensified across Horn Island, investigators began reconstructing the day's timeline minute by minute. And soon, technology would provide something human memory could not. A silent record that had been documenting movements all along. The boat's GPS data. What those records revealed would become one of the most closely examined parts of Nolan Wells' final day. Unlike human memory, technology doesn't become emotional. It doesn't forget. It doesn't fill in missing pieces. It simply records. As investigators continued reviewing what happened on the 4th of July, attention turned toward one source that couldn't be influenced by stress, grief, or the passage of time. The boat's GPS history. Every movement, every stop, every recorded location. Together, those digital records began forming a timeline investigators could compare against witness statements. According to publicly reported GPS information, the boat departed its dock that morning and traveled toward Horn Island, arriving before midday. For several hours, the group remained on the island enjoying the holiday. To everyone there, it likely felt like another summer afternoon. Nothing suggested those ordinary moments would soon become evidence in an investigation watched by millions. Then came the moment that changed everything. Late that afternoon, the boat left Horn Island. Nolan Wells was not on board. That single fact has never been in dispute. The questions begin immediately afterward. Why did the boat leave without him? Who believed he was staying? Who believed he intended to return? Did everyone understand the same plan? Or did confusion develop during those final minutes? Those questions remain central to understanding what happened. The GPS record continued documenting the boat's movements after it departed the island. Instead of ending with one direct trip home, the vessel made several recorded movements before eventually being removed from the water. Standing alone, those movements don't establish wrongdoing. GPS data shows where a boat traveled. It does not explain why. That's an important distinction. Investigators often compare digital evidence with witness interviews because each tells a different part of the story. One provides location, the other provides context. Only when both are examined together does a clearer picture begin to emerge. For Nolan's family, every new piece of information has carried enormous emotional weight. Imagine receiving another timeline, another report, another explanation, only to realize it still doesn't answer the one question that matters most. What happened to your son? That uncertainty has shaped nearly every public statement the family has made. They have repeatedly emphasized that they are searching for answers, not assumptions. As public attention intensified, thousands of people across social media began building their own theories. Some believed the GPS data proved one conclusion. Others believed it proved another. But investigators have consistently reminded the public that a timeline alone cannot determine exactly what occurred. Evidence must be examined together. Witness accounts, digital records, forensic findings, electronic devices. Every piece matters. Every piece must fit. And if one piece doesn't, investigators keep looking. That careful approach became even more important as another part of the case drew increasing attention. Nolan's mobile phone. In today's world, smartphones quietly document much of our daily lives. Messages, photos, locations, search history, app activity. Sometimes they reveal very little. Other times, they become one of the most valuable pieces of evidence investigators have. According to public statements from the family, Nolan's phone became a major focus almost immediately. Those close to him reportedly described him as someone who regularly used social media, making an unusual period of silence stand out. By itself, silence proves nothing. People put their phones away every day. Batteries die. Signals disappear. Devices become damaged. But investigators still examine those gaps carefully because timing can sometimes provide important context. The family has also publicly discussed differences between certain reported location information and where the device was ultimately recovered. Those observations are among the issues investigators continue evaluating. At this stage, authorities have not publicly stated that the phone establishes any criminal act. Instead, it remains one important piece of a much larger investigation. And sometimes, the smallest electronic detail can answer questions no witness remembers asking. Or, it can create entirely new questions investigators never expected. If you're still watching at this point, drop a comment saying, "I'm still here." I'd also like to know what stands out to you most so far. Please keep the discussion respectful and focused on the verified facts. And if you're enjoying this documentary, consider subscribing to PalimpSest Crimes. Your support helps us continue creating carefully researched true crime documentaries. While investigators continued examining digital evidence, Nolan's family faced a different kind of challenge, one no parent should ever have to experience: preparing to say goodbye while still waiting for answers. For them, every interview, every press conference, every new development was about far more than headlines. It was about understanding the final hours of someone they loved. And just when it seemed the investigation had reached a standstill, a major legal development changed the direction of the case. A grand jury would soon enter the picture, but what that actually means is often very different from what many people believe. For weeks, questions seemed to outnumber answers. Every public statement added another piece to the puzzle. Every new report answered one question while creating two more. For Nolan's family, the waiting had become almost unbearable. Then came an announcement that immediately captured national attention. The case would eventually be presented to a grand jury. To many people watching from the outside, those words sounded like a breakthrough. Some assumed charges were imminent. Others believed investigators had already reached a conclusion. But the reality is much more measured. A grand jury is not a verdict. It does not determine guilt. It does not automatically mean a crime has been proven. Instead, it is part of the legal process used to evaluate evidence and determine whether criminal charges are appropriate based on the information presented. In other words, it represents movement, not closure. That distinction matters, because in high-profile cases, public expectations often move much faster than official investigations. Investigators are required to follow evidence wherever it leads. Sometimes that process moves quickly. Other times, it can take weeks or even months. Every interview must be reviewed, every digital record examined, every forensic report carefully evaluated, and every conclusion must be supported by evidence rather than assumptions. For Nolan's parents, however, the legal process isn't just a series of procedural steps. It's deeply personal. Every day without answers is another day wondering what happened during their son's final hours. Every delay is another reminder that the story remains unfinished. Publicly, the family has continued asking for patience while also urging anyone with relevant information to come forward. Their message has remained remarkably consistent. They want facts, not rumors, not speculation, not social media theories, just the truth. That focus became especially important as misinformation continued spreading online. Several widely shared posts claimed to reveal dramatic new evidence. Others suggested investigators had already solved the case. Some even presented edited videos and recycled images as though they documented Nolan's final day. But one by one, many of those claims were publicly addressed and corrected. A photograph that some believed had been taken after Nolan disappeared was later confirmed to have been captured days earlier. Its upload date, not the day it was taken, had caused confusion across social media. Another widely circulated video was also clarified after viewers mistakenly believed Nolan appeared in the recording. According to public statements from individuals involved, that interpretation was incorrect. Moments like these highlight an important challenge in today's world. Information travels faster than verification. A single misleading post can reach hundreds of thousands of people before investigators have the opportunity to respond. For families already grieving, that creates an entirely different kind of pain. Imagine opening your phone each morning, only to find strangers debating your loved one's final hours using rumors instead of facts. Imagine watching people build conclusions from incomplete information while you are still waiting for official answers yourself. It's a burden few people ever experience. And yet, many families caught in high-profile investigations know it all too well. Throughout this case, Nolan's parents have repeatedly asked for one simple thing: respect. Respect for the investigation. Respect for verified information. And above all, respect for Nolan. Because behind every headline, behind every breaking news alert, behind every viral post, was a young man whose life meant far more than the mystery surrounding his death. He was someone's son, someone's friend, someone whose future was still unfolding. That perspective can easily disappear once a case becomes national news. But it's the perspective that matters most. As investigators continued examining evidence, another development quietly offered hope that more answers could eventually emerge. Experts representing both the family and the official investigation agreed to participate in a joint examination of Nolan's phone. Rather than working separately and releasing competing conclusions, both sides would review the evidence together. For the Wells family, that cooperation represented something they had been asking for since the beginning: transparency. As of the latest public updates, that examination had not yet been completed. Like so many other parts of this investigation, the family continued waiting. Waiting for reports, waiting for analysis, waiting for answers, and perhaps most difficult of all, waiting for certainty. Because uncertainty has a unique way of affecting grief. It keeps every possibility alive. Every unanswered question continues echoing long after everyone else has moved on to the next headline. But before this documentary ends, there is one final part of Nolan's story that deserves just as much attention as the investigation itself. Not the evidence, not the timelines, not the legal proceedings, the legacy he left behind. Because sometimes, understanding who a person was tells us just as much as understanding what happened to them. And for Nolan Wells, that legacy continues to live on through the people who refuse to stop searching for the truth. Long before millions of people learned the name Nolan Wells, he was simply Nolan, a son, a friend, a teammate, someone with plans that stretched far beyond a single holiday weekend. To the public, this story has become a timeline, a collection of interviews, GPS records, legal updates, press conferences. But for the people who knew him best, none of those things come close to capturing who he was. Every photograph shared by his family tells a story that existed long before this investigation. Smiles with friends, family gatherings, football memories, ordinary moments that now carry extraordinary meaning. It's often said that true crime begins where someone else's normal life suddenly ends. That's what makes stories like this so difficult. Because no family ever imagines they'll become the subject of national headlines. One day, you're planning a holiday. The next, you're speaking at press conferences, reviewing investigative timelines, waiting beside a silent phone, hoping someone has the answer you've been searching for. For Nolan's parents, that transition happened almost overnight. Since then, they've remained remarkably consistent in one message. They want the investigation to follow the evidence. Nothing more, nothing less. They've resisted turning unanswered questions into accusations. Instead, they've asked investigators to continue examining every available fact until a complete picture emerges. That patience hasn't been easy. Every passing day brings another reminder that the answers they're seeking have not yet arrived. Yet despite their grief, they've continued speaking publicly. Not because they enjoy attention, but because they believe someone, somewhere, may still hold information that could help investigators better understand what happened. Sometimes, a single forgotten conversation, a photograph sitting unnoticed on an old phone, or a detail that once seemed insignificant, can suddenly become important months later. That's why investigators often encourage anyone with credible information to come forward, even if they believe what they know is minor. The smallest detail can sometimes complete the largest puzzle. As of today, authorities continue examining the evidence while following the legal process. No final determination has been announced. No grand jury decision has been made public, and many of the questions discussed throughout this documentary remain unresolved. That uncertainty can be frustrating, especially in an era where people expect immediate answers. But real investigations rarely unfold in real time. Evidence must be verified. Witness statements must be compared. Digital records must be authenticated. Forensic findings must be carefully interpreted. The goal isn't simply to find an answer. It's to find the correct answer. And sometimes, that takes far longer than anyone hopes. If there's one lesson this case leaves behind, it's the importance of separating verified facts from speculation. Rumors may spread quickly, but they rarely help families heal. Facts may take longer to emerge, but they're the only foundation upon which justice can stand. For everyone following this case, the waiting continues. For investigators, the work continues. And for Nolan's loved ones, the hope for complete answers continues. Only time will reveal what additional evidence may emerge. Until then, this remains an active story, one that deserves careful reporting, thoughtful discussion, and respect for everyone whose lives have been changed by it. If you've stayed with us until this point, thank you. These stories are never easy to tell, and they're certainly never easy for the families living through them. If you found this documentary informative, please take a moment to like this video, leave a respectful comment, and subscribe to PalimpSest Crimes. Every subscription helps us continue producing carefully researched true crime documentaries focused on verified facts rather than speculation. And before you go, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Based only on the confirmed information discussed in this documentary, what question do you believe investigators still need to answer the most? Please keep the discussion respectful of Nolan, his family, and everyone connected to this ongoing investigation. Thank you for spending your time with us. This has been PalimpSest Crimes. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and always look beyond the headlines.